So this is an example Excel spreadsheet to show you how to complete yours for the StockTrack project. This data over here, just keep in mind that this is example data, so this is 2009 information and not 2016. So don't copy and paste these numbers. Basically, you'll enter in all of your information, collect your portfolio values, Dow Jones, S&P 500, and NASDAQ. Then you'll go over and calculate your weekly returns. So it's ending value minus beginning value, and this is for the, and divided by beginning value. This is for the S&P 500. So I want to go to that column, ending minus beginning, and divided by the beginning. And then I want to drag that formula down. I had some formulas over here just to make things work out, so don't worry that those numbers changed. And then here, I'll start over. Ending value minus beginning value divided by the beginning value. And then I can just drag this formula too. So now I've got my weekly returns, and this should allow me to calculate beta. So right here I put use the slope function. So remember, when we're trying to figure out the beta, we're doing a regression, and so the S&P 500 is the X values, the portfolio returns are the Y values. So for beta, I'll type equals slope and open parentheses, and then you can see that it asks for the known Y's. So the Y's are the portfolio returns, and then I'll hit comma, and I need the known X's, and I'll highlight this. So I get my beta. For standard deviation, you see that I need to use the STDEV function. So STDEV, and I want the standard deviation of the portfolio, so I'm going to click on this one. Then I'll go to the standard deviation of the S&P 500, and so I'll do STDEV and get that. So you can see my standard deviation was slightly less than the S&P 500. The holding period returns of the portfolio, that's just going to be the final ending value of the portfolio. So this 548,000 minus the beginning value of 500,000, and then divided by the beginning. So that would be what you earned over the entire time period. You can see that I made myself look good here. So I made 9.69%. And then for the S&P 500, we'll do the same thing. So S&P 500 and the beginning value and divided by beginning. Now I got those holding period returns. The 3-month T-bill rate, you can find this on Yahoo Finance or Bloomberg. Let's see if I've got Bloomberg up here. So actually I went to Bloomberg. Let me just start over. Well, sorry, I got a email. Okay. Okay, so Bloomberg.com. And then when everything showed up, go to fixed income. And you can see that I want to go to US over here, so I'll click on US. And I've got the 3-month government, or which was like the Treasury bill, and I can see that as of this day when I'm looking at it, it's 0.31%. So it's a good idea, because this is current, just use 0.31% here. So when I go back to Excel, I'm going to put 0.0031 to make sure it gets to 0.31% since it's already formatted. See, if I put 31, it would say 31%, so 0.0031. Now the Sharpe ratio, you can see I put a formula here. It's the holding period return of the portfolio minus the risk-free rate, which we've done before, divided by the standard deviation of the portfolio. So the holding period return of the portfolio was this, minus the risk-free rate, 0.31, and divide it by the standard deviation of the portfolio, which is over here. So I get my Sharpe ratio, and I might have added, like, to get the Sharpe ratio of, let me add one thing, the Sharpe ratio of the S&P 500. So here, let's see, format that. This one would equal pretty much the similar thing, the return for the S&P 500, so the holding period return minus the risk-free rate, and then divided by the standard deviation of the S&P 500. So the Sharpe ratio, the higher the better. So you can see I did 2.89 versus 2.44, so I did better than the S&P 500. And then the Treynor ratio is 1. Well, let me go back to the Sharpe ratio. The Sharpe ratio tells you how well you did in terms of total risk, as if you were just going to pick, this one portfolio was all you had to invest in. The Treynor ratio over here considers that you're already diversified, because you can see in the denominator, we're going to do the same thing in the numerator, but in the denominator we divide by the beta of the portfolio. So this one is going to equal, again, for the holding period return of the portfolio minus the risk-free rate and divided by the beta that we calculated before. And in case we had to calculate a Treynor, let me just copy this. Let's say that was for the portfolio. And this is going to be for the S&P 500. So this one, I need to delete that because that's not correct, is just going to be basically the return of the S&P 500 minus the risk-free rate, and then divided by 1, because the beta of the S&P 500, which is the market, should be 1. So in the Treynor, the higher the number, the better. And so I got 0.13, which is higher than 0.09. And then Jensen's alpha is the last thing to calculate, and you can really only do this for the portfolio. So all we need is the holding period of return of the portfolio minus what the CAPM would predict as the required return for the portfolio. So I will say equals and the holding period return of the portfolio, and then minus, open parentheses, the CAPM is the risk-free rate plus beta times the return on the market, which is going to be the holding period return of the S&P 500 minus the risk-free rate. And then I'll need to put another parentheses to close that. So Jensen's alpha, if you get a negative alpha, that means you did worse overall than the market. If you get a positive Jensen's alpha, that's good news. You did well. The higher that number, the better. So this should help you complete this for the portfolio. And then since you have some questions that deal with the mutual fund, I would also make this same Excel spreadsheet, but just change this column. So do this first, because you can leave all these equations there, and just change this column to like your mutual fund value. Put all those values in there and see how you did with all the numbers there. That way you can make those comparisons. So hopefully this will help, and I will see you in class.